The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under my door like a coward's whisper. I was making coffee when I noticed the crisp white envelope on my doormat, the Meadowbrook Estates HOA logo embossed in gold at the corner. My service dog, Max, a beautiful German shepherd with intelligent brown eyes, sat beside me as I tore it open. Notice of violation, the header screamed in bold letters. My hands trembled as I read further. It has come to our attention that you are harboring a large breed dog in violation of Section 7.3 of the Meadowbrook Estates Community Guidelines. All dogs exceeding 25 pounds are strictly prohibited. You have 14 days to remove the animal or face a fine of $200 per day. I felt the blood drain from my face. Max wasn't just a pet. He was my lifeline. After the car accident 3 years ago that left me with a traumatic brain injury and PTSD, Max had been specially trained to detect my seizures before they happened, to apply pressure therapy during panic attacks, and to wake me from nightmares that left me paralyzed with fear. "This can't be happening, buddy," I whispered, running my fingers through Max's soft fur. He leaned into my touch, sensing my distress immediately. The next morning, I attended the monthly HOA meeting, my heart pounding in my chest. The community center was packed with residents, their eyes following me as I walked in with Max at my side, his service vest clearly visible. I could hear the whispers, feel the judgment radiating from every corner. Helen Carmichael, the HOA president, sat at the front table like a queen on her throne. She was in her mid-60s, with silver hair styled in a severe bob and lips that seemed permanently pursed in disapproval. Beside her sat Gary Chen, the treasurer, nervously shuffling papers, and Linda Morrison, the secretary, whose face at least showed a hint of sympathy. "Ms. Rivera," Helen's voice cut through the murmuring like a knife. "I see you've received our notice. I trust you'll be making arrangements to remove the animal promptly." I stood up, my legs shaking but my voice steady. "Mrs. Carmichael, Max isn't just any dog. He's a certified service animal. I have a disability, and he's medically necessary. Under the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, you can't." "Oh, here we go with the legal mumbo-jumbo," Helen interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Everyone claims their dog is a service animal these days. Next you'll be telling me your goldfish is an emotional support animal. Rules are rules, Ms. Rivera. This is a premium community, and we have standards." "I have documentation," I said, my voice rising. I pulled out a folder from my bag. Medical records, training certifications, a letter from my neurologist. Everything you need to verify that Max is legitimate. Helen barely glanced at the papers I held up. "Frankly, I don't care if the Pope himself signed those documents. The no large dog policy was in place when you moved here 6 months ago. You should have disclosed this before purchasing your unit." I did disclose it. My voice cracked with frustration. I submitted all the paperwork to the property management company during closing. They approved it. "Well, the property management company doesn't make the rules. We do." Helen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Besides, several residents have complained. Mrs. Patterson says she's allergic. The Johnsons claim they're afraid of large dogs. We have to think about everyone's comfort and safety." I looked around the room, searching for support in the sea of faces. Most people avoided my gaze, suddenly finding their phones or the ceiling incredibly interesting. But then I noticed Sarah Chen, Gary's wife, who gave me a small, encouraging nod. And old Mr. Williams in the back corner, a veteran who always stopped to pet Max during our morning walks, looked furious. "This is discrimination," I said, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "You're violating federal law." Helen stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Are you threatening to sue this HOA, Ms. Rivera? Because I should warn you, we have deep pockets and excellent legal counsel. We've fought off troublemakers before, and we'll do it again. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a different community, one that's more accommodating to your situation." The way she said "your situation" made my blood boil. I felt tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of these people. Max pressed against my leg, grounding me, reminding me to breathe. "I'll see you in court," I said quietly, then turned and walked out, my head held high despite the trembling in my hands. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. I contacted disability rights organizations, filed complaints with HUD, and hired a lawyer who specialized in fair housing cases. Her name was Patricia Mills, a sharp woman in her 40s who listened to my story with growing anger. "They really said that?" Patricia asked, shaking her head. "In front of witnesses? This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen. They've violated about 5 different federal laws." Meanwhile, the harassment escalated. Someone spray-painted "No dogs" on my parking space. I found notes on my car threatening to call animal control. Helen had distributed a petition to all residents demanding Max's removal, and several people had actually signed it. The daily fines started accumulating, even though Patricia had sent them a cease and desist letter. But something else was happening too. Sarah Chen knocked on my door one evening, holding a casserole and an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry about all this," she said. "My husband thinks Helen is completely out of line, but is too afraid to speak up. She basically runs this place like a dictatorship. But I wanted you to know that not everyone agrees with her." Mr. Williams stopped by next, with a list of 8 other residents who wanted to support me. "I didn't serve 3 tours overseas just to come home and watch bullies push people around," he said gruffly. "Helen Carmichael doesn't speak for all of us." The case moved surprisingly fast. Patricia filed for an emergency injunction, and within 3 weeks, we were standing in federal court. Helen showed up with the HOA's lawyer, a slick corporate attorney who clearly hadn't done his homework on disability rights law. Judge Martha Rodriguez, a middle-aged Latina woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened to both sides. Helen's lawyer argued about property values, community standards, and the HOA's right to self-governance. Patricia systematically demolished every argument with citations of federal law, precedent cases, and documentation of Max's training and my medical need. The turning point came when the judge asked to see Max's certifications. I brought him forward, and as we approached the bench, Max remained perfectly calm and professional. Judge Rodriguez reviewed the documents, then looked directly at Helen. "Mrs. Carmichael, are you aware that denying reasonable accommodation for a service animal is a violation of federal law? That the Fair Housing Act explicitly prohibits discrimination based on disability?" Helen shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, we simply have rules. Rules that violate federal law are not enforceable," the judge said sharply. "Furthermore, I'm deeply troubled by the harassment Ms. Rivera has documented. Spray painting her parking space? Threatening notes? Does your HOA condone this behavior? We can't control every resident," Helen protested weakly. "But you started the petition that created this hostile environment," Judge Rodriguez said, holding up a copy of the document. "Mrs. Carmichael, I'm ruling in favor of Ms. Rivera. The HOA is ordered to immediately cease all fines, to send a written apology, and to distribute educational materials about disability rights and service animals to all residents. You're also ordered to pay Ms. Rivera's legal fees and damages for emotional distress. Additionally, I'm imposing a $50,000 fine on the HOA for willful violation of federal law." The courtroom was silent. Helen's face turned bright red, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "if I hear of any retaliation against Ms. Rivera, I will personally ensure that the penalties are much, much steeper." "Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Helen whispered. A month later, everything had changed. Helen Carmichael resigned as HOA president in disgrace, and the board held emergency elections. Sarah Chen's husband Gary became the new president, with Mr. Williams as vice president. Their first act was to revise the community guidelines to explicitly welcome service animals and to include comprehensive anti-discrimination policies. The spray paint was removed from my parking space and replaced with a designated spot closer to my door. Residents who had ignored me before now stopped to chat, many apologizing for their silence. Mrs. Patterson, the woman who claimed allergies, even admitted she'd never actually been allergic to dogs, she just didn't like them and had thought Helen needed support. The most surprising change came from an unexpected source. The $50,000 fine and legal fees had drained the HOA's reserves, and when the board reviewed the finances, they discovered Helen had been using HOA funds for personal expenses for years. The lawsuit had inadvertently exposed her fraud, and she now faced criminal charges. On a sunny Saturday morning, Mr. Williams organized a service animal awareness day at the community center. 12 residents brought their service dogs, therapy animals, and emotional support companions. Children played with friendly dogs under supervision, and experts gave presentations about the important work these animals do. I stood with Max, watching kids gently pet him while their parents asked genuine questions about his training. Sarah brought me lemonade and smiled. "You did this," she said. "You stood up to a bully and changed this whole community for the better." I looked down at Max, who gazed back at me with those warm, intelligent eyes. He'd been with me through panic attacks and seizures, through nightmares and doctor's appointments, through every dark moment since my accident. And now, he'd been with me through this victory too. "We did it together," I said, scratching behind Max's ears. "Just like we do everything." That evening, I received an email from Patricia Mills with a photo attachment. It was the official court order, framed and ready to hang. Her message read, "Congratulations, Emma. You didn't just win a case, you changed lives. That takes real courage." I printed the email and tucked it into my journal, right next to Max's certification papers. Then I took my best friend for a walk around our community, both of us finally, truly home.